At Christmas dinner, my son said, "You're a leech. You can't stay here anymore." So I left. Hello besties, welcome to Mama Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. At Christmas dinner, my son stood, tapped his glass, and said, "You're a leech. You can't stay here anymore." So I left. The room made a sound I'd never heard, a soft falling like tissue paper giving way. Steam rose from the roast, paper crowns tilted on heads, a joke card half-read in my hand. The clinking stopped. The heat in my face arrived before the meaning did. My wine glass was empty and light, my name-place card tucked under its base, as if it could hold anything steady. Across the table, my daughter-in-law smiled the kind of smile people wear when company is present and something private is breaking. My grandson stared at me, then at his father, then back at his plate, as if the answer might be inside the peas. Someone coughed. Someone else adjusted a napkin that didn't need adjusting. I felt the chair beneath me, the fabric seam pressing the back of my thigh, the ridiculous crown slipping over one eyebrow. I didn't ask why. I didn't say, "How dare you?" The words would have been kindling. I could feel the room ready to burn. A clear thought, cool as glass, moved through the heat. Do not make a scene. Not tonight. Not in front of the child, who knows the shape of your hands better than anyone. I slid the paper crown off and set it by my plate. The chair legs scraped once, a small animal sound on wood. I stood, and the air changed. A draft met the line of my neck, where the scarf didn't reach. My coat hung on the back of the chair I had been given, not the coat rack by the door, an old habit of staying close to exits. I pulled it on. The sleeves remembered me. My scarf, still warm from my lap, looped twice around my throat. The gift I'd brought for the little one, a book wrapped in reindeer paper, sat by my plate. I touched it, then left it where it was. No one tried to stop me. That somehow took my breath more than the words had. My son's hand flattened on the tablecloth. His wedding ring flashed once in the chandelier light. My daughter-in-law's smile didn't move. The child leaned out of his chair, small fingers curled over the edge, waiting for a cue no one gave. The hallway smelled of pine cleaner and cinnamon. The front door had a new lock plate I hadn't noticed when I arrived. I ran my fingers over the cold metal and then opened the door. Night air came in sharp, like biting an apple. Outside, the steps were sanded with grit that crunched under my shoes. Across the street, a snowman leaned as if listening. A neighbor's window showed a blue TV glow and a row of stockings. The sky held its own light, low and winter-dense. I stepped into it and did not look back. The cold did what it always does. It brought my body back to me. My breath made small clouds. My ears stung. A strand of hair stuck to my lip and tasted of salt. The neighborhood had the quiet that only happens on holiday evenings, the kind made of full bellies and early bedtimes. Somewhere, far off, a car door shut. Somewhere else, laughter rose and fell, then stopped. No scene. Not tonight. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, the automatic alert for some subscription I meant to cancel. I didn't pull it out. The sidewalk took me past hedges threaded with fairy lights and plastic deer glowing softly. My hands found my pockets and counted what mattered. The soft bend of bills folded twice, a coin edge, a receipt, peppermint lint, the square of my phone through the coat lining, warmer than my fingers. The key ring sat heavy against my palm, 3 rings nested, one key that mattered to me, the others that belonged to doors I had already closed. The one that mattered pressed a familiar dent into my hand. I moved it once, then let it rest and kept walking. The bus shelter at the corner held a slick advertisement for a holiday sale, a couple laughing under a fake snowfall, hands wrapped around paper cups. The shelter's light was humming and a little too blue. I sat on the cold bench, and the chill went straight through the coat to my back. The route map had a thumbprint over the stop I needed. I wiped it away and watched my breath fog the plastic again. My phone came out because I needed information, not conversation. Battery at 12%. I cupped it with both hands to keep the wind off and turned off Wi-Fi, turned down the brightness, habits learned from other nights when small things mattered. The rideshare prices were climbing, holiday surcharge, and cold. The bus was due in 7 minutes. The motel search results stacked up. Photos cropped to hide the water stains, stars that meant different things to different people. I sorted by price and distance, and felt something like steadiness settle in. A room is a door, and a lock and a bed. It doesn't need much more than that tonight. Behind the shelter, a hedge rattled and a cat darted out, white paws flashing. A man in a wool cap crossed the street and lifted 2 bags higher on his shoulders. He glanced at me and then away in the careful way strangers do when they recognize a private moment and do not want to own it. I thought of sending a text, 3 words. I'm okay. But the message would be a thread, and threads pull. I could feel the tug already. What happened? Where are you? Let's talk in the morning. Why did you leave like that? Why did you say that? Come back. Don't come back. The phone felt heavier than its weight. I slid it back into my pocket and sat on my hands to warm them. The bus came with a shrug of brakes and a wash of air that smelled of diesel and rubber. I stood, boarded, tapped my card, and took a seat near the middle where the heater sometimes works. The windows were fogged in circles where people had written initials. I wiped a small porthole with the side of my fist and watched the neighborhood move. A wreath on every 3rd door. A pile of recycling that hadn't been taken in time. A bicycle half buried in old snow by a fence. The bus jolted and my head tapped lightly against the seat back. I let the motion carry me. The driver's radio murmured a sports recap. Low and steady. A different world. 2 teenagers got on at the next stop, cheeks red, laughter muffled in scarves. An older woman tried to tuck a frozen turkey farther into her tote, the plastic creaking. Life has a way of insisting on itself, no matter what anyone says at dinner. I checked my phone again. 11%. The motel with the least dishonest photos had a vacancy and an online booking that did not demand more than I had. I entered the details with careful thumbs, double-checking without letting my hands shake. The confirmation screen loaded, slowly, then all at once. Room held. Late check-in allowed. The address was across town, near the strip of tire shops and a 24-hour laundromat. I took a screenshot as if it could pin reality in place. 10%. The bus turned onto a wider road lined with shuttered stores and strings of lights caught in the wind. I let my eyes rest on passing things. The closed florist, the dark barbershop, a car wash with its sprayers standing like frozen trees. I breathed in and out, the way I had taught a small boy to breathe when he woke from a bad dream and needed a ladder out of the dark. This was not a dream. It was a sentence spoken out loud and a choice made in answer. I did not have to accept his word to accept the moment. I could choose the size of my leaving. At the next stop, I pulled the cord and stood. The bus sighed. The doors opened and the night reached in. The sidewalk here was rougher. The light came from a diner sign that flickered between O and open. I watched the bus's taillights pool red and then thin out as it turned the corner and was gone. On the corner, the wind found the seam of my coat and went straight through me, and I laughed once, short and without humor, at the thought of my paper crown sitting on a plate with no head to wear it. I picture my grandson's hands on the gift paper, the careful way he peels tape so characters don't tear. I pictured his mother's face, still and bright, and my son's ring catching light as his hand pressed flat. No scene. Not tonight. I walked toward the motel street, as if I had always known my feet would know the way. The sidewalks were not slick yet, the grid held. A man stood in a doorway smoking, and the ember marked his breathing. A bus shelter there hummed like the one before, another small stage in a city full of them. I passed it and kept going. At the corner, I paused under a lamp and took my phone out again. 9%. I opened my notes and wrote a single line. You do not have to fight to leave. Then I saved it and turned the phone face down in my pocket, as if that could keep the power from draining. The motel sign blinked 2 blocks away, 1 letter out. I could already see the office window and the plastic plant and the bell on the counter. I could already see a key on a fob sliding across to me, stamped with a number that would be mine for the night. I would take it and I would sleep, not because I wasn't hurt, but because tomorrow needed me clear. Everything I owned was still in their house, neatly stacked in the corner of a room that had never been mine. I would deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, I had a door I could close and a promise I could keep. I booked the room across town and told myself out loud, The words I could hold to. I am not going back. Not tonight. Not until I can walk in as a guest and leave as one, too. The motel office smelled like lemon cleaner and microwave noodles. A plastic pen hung from a chain that had lost its shine. The clerk wore a knit hat indoors and slid a clipboard across the counter, without looking up from the small TV bolted in the corner. On screen, a host in a red sweater arranged sugar cookies shaped like mittens and spoke in a voice meant for people who had never burned anything. The vending machine in the hallway hummed like a low, persistent thought. I filled the form in block letters. Address. I paused, then wrote the one I still had to write. The clerk tapped the bell once, out of habit, not need, and held out a key fob stamped with 14. His nails were bitten down. Ice machine's out, he said, but the soda's cold. I thanked him like he was doing me a favor and not a job. The key made a soft weight in my palm. Room 14 had a door that stuck if you didn't lift as you turned the knob. The carpet had a rectangle of darker blue where a dresser once stood. I set my bag on the chair that didn't want to be sat on and listened to the radiator decide whether it was working. The remote didn't match the TV, but the TV didn't seem to mind. When it came on, the same holiday host smiled, and for a second I wondered if every screen in the city was tuned to that face. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress had a valley where other bodies had found the middle before me. The bedspread's pattern was meant to be cheerful and was not. I took out my phone and opened the family thread. The last photo, there was my grandson in a paper crown 2 Christmases ago, cheeks red, frosting on his lip. The cursor blinked in the text box. I'm safe, I typed. Then backspaced. At a motel, I typed. Backspaced again. I held the phone in both hands to keep it still. The blinking line looked like waiting. I closed the app and set the phone face down. I hadn't intended to end up under their roof. I had intended to rest after the doctor said the word that made me think of people older than me. Pneumonia, and after my manager said the phrase that was older than both of us. Budget cuts. I told myself I'd stay for 2 weeks, 3 at most, until the coughing turned back into a voice and the savings I had could carry me into a small place with a door I could lock. The first night, my son made tea and said, "It's temporary." I agreed because I meant it. The chair they found for my room had a blanket folded over the back. The air smelled like laundry. I slept the way sick people sleep, heavy and grateful. 2 weeks stretched the way things stretch when no one pulls. I did small things that felt like paying rent without calling it that. I started the dishwasher and unloaded it. I wiped down counters, learned the way their trash schedule worked, folded dish towels the way she liked them folded. On good days, I tucked $20 bills into an envelope in my dresser, and, when I had enough, I slid the envelope to my son on a quiet evening and said, "For the electric," as if the cord from the kettle to the wall ran directly through my pocket. On bad days, I stayed out of the kitchen until the lights were off, then ate standing up, slow so the house wouldn't hear it. The frictions weren't a single drop, they were a drip. Once, I used my card to order a winter coat for the boy and forgot the shipping address defaulted to theirs. The store kept the card on file. Later, something hit wrong and their account overdraft. The bank sent a polite email with a stern subject line. We fixed it in minutes, but minutes can be loud. Another afternoon, I stacked my boxes, winter clothes, old photographs, the kind of books that make movers sigh, in the hallway for now, and forgot now is a short word. A stray Lego dug into my foot as I moved a box back, and I said a word I shouldn't have, too loud, right by his open door. On a Wednesday, I misread the bus schedule and missed the pickup at school. The child waited with a teacher who had a kind face and no patience for strangers who say, "I'm sorry," like it's a coat to put on and take off. Sometimes, at night, with the TV low, voices threaded through the wall from the master bedroom. Not shouting, just the careful kind of arguing that happens in whispers because small ears sleep in the next room. My name wasn't in every sentence, but I recognized its shape. Later, in the morning, there would be extra care in the way she placed a plate in front of me, in the way he asked about my day with his eyes on his phone. It wasn't all rub. The day the child stood and walked for more than 2 steps, it was my hands he walked to, mouth open in surprise at himself. He had my ears in his grip before I knew what was happening. I cried in the kitchen that afternoon and told them it was the onions. The sink that never drained right, he had meant to call a plumber. I had meant to be useful. I spread tools on a towel and found the clog and felt, for an hour, like a person who solves things. I also lingered, more than once, in the kitchen at midnight with the fridge open, cold light on my face, a spoon in the peanut butter like a teenager, and not a guest. I told myself I'd buy another jar in the morning. Sometimes I did. The conversation that changed the air had happened a week before tonight. They sat me at the dining table with a printed page between us. She had written it. I could tell by the neat lines and the places where the pen had gone back over a letter to make it darker.
"We just want clarity," she said.
"We want everyone to feel safe and respected." The words weren't wrong. The paper had boxes for me to initial, a monthly amount toward utilities, a quiet hours window, guest guidelines, agreements about food, a time frame. She had chosen soft phrases, target date, shared spaces, communication plan. It wasn't a trap. It was a bridge she wanted me to help build. I looked at the boxes and felt small in a way I hadn't felt since I was 19 and signing my first lease with a landlord who watched my hand as if my name might spit ink. "I'll read it," I said. I folded the paper once and slipped it under the placemat. I didn't read it that night or the next. I told myself it was because the words would feel less like rules if I let them breathe. The truth was simpler. I didn't want to sign anything that told me I needed permission to boil water in a house where I had taught the boy to blow on soup. In the motel room, the radiator coughed and settled. I drank water from the bathroom cup and tasted the faint plastic that comes from cups wrapped in thin sleeves for strangers. My phone buzzed, and my sister's name lit the screen. She's the kind of person who fits an entire hug into the way she says hello. "I heard," she said, though I hadn't told her. "News travels through families the way drafts travel through old houses. Come here. I'll make up the couch." I lay back and closed my eyes and pictured her linen couch with the little snag on the arm from the year her cat was still alive. It would be warm there and loud in a way that makes loneliness quiet. "I love you," I said. "I need to try this on my own first." She was silent for a beat. "Okay," she said, "but I'm keeping the porch light on." We talked about other things for a few minutes, the kind that say, "I see you," without pressing. When we hung up, the room felt less like a statement and more like a place. I turned the TV off. The silence had a sound of its own. The buzz in the outlet, the occasional tick from the baseboard heat, the elevator 2 doors down making up its mind to move. The phone buzzed again. A banner slid across the locked screen with my bank's logo and language that has never once sounded like good news. A recurring charge had posted. The merchant name was familiar without being friendly. I unlocked the screen and stared at the amount, trying to place the shape of the word next to it. Not the grocery store, not the gas station, not the bus pass app. The address on the receipt, when I tapped for details, was theirs. Their street. A small pin on a map I could read in the dark. Something inside me arranged itself. I could feel a path opening that had nothing to do with the motel's hallway. Maybe the word he chose at dinner had a root I hadn't pulled yet. Maybe I had tangled something that kept tugging at them long after I forgot it existed. I set the phone down on the nightstand and turned it face down again, though the screen was already dark. The room was very quiet. I lay there with my hands folded on my stomach, looking at the ceiling's spackle constellations, and let the thought finish forming. There's a bill I didn't remember making that is still being paid in a house that isn't mine. The laundromat opened at 6. By 6:15 I was there with a coffee too hot to drink and a pocket full of paper I hadn't wanted to look at in the dark. The place had the smell of wet cotton and coin dust. A radio near the change machine whispered carols, the kind you can hum without agreeing with. I chose a folding table under a buzzing light and spread everything out. Bank statements with corners turned dog-ear, receipts smoothed with the heel of my hand, a pen I'd borrowed from the motel. The coffee burned my tongue on the first sip. It made me feel awake in a way the night hadn't. I sorted by dates, a small act of control. There it was again, the charge from last night, the one with the address that wasn't mine. I stared until the numbers steadied, and the letters meant what they meant. The merchant name was a storage brand with a cheerful logo, the place I'd rented when I told myself I'd be in their house for 3 weeks. I remembered the day, a clerk in a vest, a unit the size of a walk-in closet, me nodding when he said the first month was half off if I set up autopay. I had typed fast because I was embarrassed to be there, embarrassed to be keeping anything anywhere but in my own home. I had used my card, my email, and because the form forced a home address, their street. I told myself it was a detail. Details are often the fuse. I went onto the storage company's app and scrolled through settings I should have read back when my head didn't ache. There, in a corner I didn't know to check, was a bill pay option connected through a third-party bundle to household utilities. A neat diagram showed little logos holding hands: electric, water, internet, storage. At some point, whether by algorithm or human error, my storage payment, carrying their address like a passport, had joined their addresses bundle for a month, hopped to their side, and left a mark. The bank had corrected it. I could see the reversal later. But reversals don't erase what people feel on the day their account dips into warning red. A dryer thumped a sneaker 2 machines over, steady as a heart. I set my coffee down, took a breath that found my ribs, and started doing what I should have done months ago. I canceled the storage autopay. I switched the address to mailing only and typed in the motels for now. I wrote down a P.O. box number from a flyer taped by the door, 6 months special, in red, and put post office on a list I hadn't named yet. My phone wobbled on vibrate and skated toward the edge of the table. I caught it and saw her name. I let it ring once more before I answered, as if one more second could make the voice that came kinder, or me braver. "Hi," my daughter-in-law said. No edge.
No apology either.
Her voice sounded smaller than usual, like she was standing in a doorway, so the walls could listen. "Are you safe?" "I am." "Okay." She waited. I wanted to say it wasn't planned. The word. He's been holding a lot. We both have. I looked at the neat rows of numbers and thought of the neat rows of boxes on the agreement I hadn't signed. "I know," I said. It wasn't fair, and parts of it were. "We've had months of not knowing where we start and stop," she said. "Food goes missing and no one mentions it. Shoes in the hall. The overdraft from the winter jacket, remember? And the schedule at school. Little things become big when they pile up. I'm not listing them to make you feel bad. I'm listing them so I don't pretend last night was one word out of nowhere." "I understand." I pushed a receipt into line with the others. "I'm finding my own list here. The storage unit. I tied it to your address because the screen wouldn't let me finish without one. It connected to your bill bundle for a month. The bank fixed it. I didn't tell you because I thought solved meant forgotten. It doesn't." She was quiet for a breath. That explains a line I couldn't parse. I filed a dispute and assumed it was a glitch. She stopped, then tried again. It still felt like being host to something we didn't invite and then being told to be grateful for company. "That's fair," I said, and the fairness stung more than accusation would have. "I leaned on your fridge more than my wallet some weeks. I leaned on the quiet after you went to bed, because silence can feel like permission. I leaned on the fact that you love him and he loves me, and thought that meant the house could stretch." "It did stretch," she said, softer. "We just never agreed how far. I'm sorry I smiled last night. It's a thing I do when I don't know what to do." "I know that too," I said. "You have a good smile." She made a small laugh that didn't get all the way out. "I'll be at work late. He's home. Give it a few days before you come by." "I won't come by," I said and meant it and didn't. "I'll arrange a time. I'll be careful with that promise." The word was harsh, she said at last. It was ugly. I wouldn't have chosen it. I wouldn't have chosen the reasons that made it feel true, I said. We sat in that for a moment, and then we both said we had to go, which was also true. After we hung up, the laundromat felt warmer, which is not the same as kind. I went walking around the block while a stranger's sheets turned in the machine with the porthole. Frost lit the edges of chain-link fences. A man in a knit cap smoked and nodded at me like we were on the same early shift. Somewhere, a bakery opened its door to let the night out and the morning in. On the corner, I stopped because an old memory ambushed me. My son at 22, in an apartment that smelled like old paint and shoes left wet. He had called me with that same shiver in his voice. "It's only for a month," he'd said. "I'll pay you back after the first paycheck." I had covered his rent twice, then a third time when a direct deposit took a vacation. When the check started coming regular, we didn't make a ceremony out of it. I didn't ask, he didn't offer, and we folded the memory into the 1,000 ways we kept each other going. I did tally it, in a private place where numbers hide near pride. He tallied something too, I imagine. Rides I didn't have to pay for, groceries he shared, the way he carried the heavy things without making me feel small. Both counts mattered. Both missed things. Back inside, I collected my paper, now stacked and faced in the same direction like well-behaved students, and went to the post office when it opened. A woman in a navy cardigan slid a form toward me and asked me to print clearly. I did. The box she offered had a number that felt lucky in a way I don't believe in. I paid for 6 months and kept the tiny key like it was a promise I could carry in a smaller pocket than the ring I hadn't let go of yet. The bank opened at 9. I stood in the little vestibule with the chaining pens and waited for the doors to click. Inside, I spoke to a person who had perfected the nod of someone receiving confessions they cannot absolve. We untangled the storage link. I turned off any bundling I hadn't asked for. I set alerts to ping only me. I withdrew cash for a deposit on something that would not care about ornaments or paper crowns, just walls and a lock and a place to put a kettle. The teller counted the bills and slid them over like I might be tempted to turn them into birds. Between errands, I bought a notebook that wasn't pretending to be anything but paper. I sat in the corner of a diner and wrote a letter I didn't plan to send yet. The words came slower than I wanted. I did not come to be kept, I wrote. I came to rest. Then I forgot to move again. I crossed out forgot and wrote let myself and crossed that out too. I left the sentence as it first arrived because it was honest enough to start with. I wrote other lines that sounded like me and some that didn't. I said I loved him without adding instructions to the love. I said I would arrange a day and a time and bring my own boxes and tape. I did not ask for apology as payment. I did not offer one as a receipt. I folded the paper and tucked it into the notebook's pocket. Outside, the day had become afternoon without consulting me. I walked toward the bus stop with my errands completed like stitches, small, regular, enough to hold for now. The phone vibrated again in my coat. I expected a spam message or a low-balance alert or my sister sending a photo of her cat's ghost. Instead, it was a text from the neighbor 2 doors down from my son's place, the one who always pretends she doesn't know anything and knows everything. They're out this afternoon, she wrote. If you want to pick up your things. I stood there with the phone in my hand and watched my breath. A bus rolled past, and the warmth of it washed over my knees. I pictured the empty house, the clean counters, the quiet. I pictured my boxes already half-packed in my head. I pictured using the key one last time to go in and only take what is mine. I didn't type a reply. I didn't announce anything to anyone. I slid the phone back into my pocket, and my hand followed it, closing around the key. I had decided I would return soon. Not yet. Not today. Today, I would go and I would be quick and careful and leave a room more empty than I found it. The house knew I was coming before I turned the key. The porch light was off, the curtains were square and still. The wreath I'd helped hang a week ago had a tilt I hadn't noticed yesterday. The lock turned with the practiced stubbornness of something used often and recently tightened. Inside, the air held cinnamon and pine cleaner, the particular clean of company having just left. I didn't call out. Silence has its own arrangements. I didn't want to break them. The entryway rug was straightened, the boots lined up by the door like students. I stepped out of my shoes and carried them in my hand to keep the floor as I'd found it. The living room had been set back to neutral, throw blankets folded, pillows plumped, game pieces corralled into a tin. The paper crown from last night was gone. On the dining table, the centerpiece candles had been trimmed and relit and snuffed again. The wax remembered heat. My room, that is what we had called it when we were being kind, smelled faintly of soap. The bedspread was pulled tight, a crease I hadn't put there. The stack of boxes I'd promised would be temporary sat against the far wall like a jury that had waited long enough. I took a breath, then moved without ceremony. 2 suitcases. The bigger one for clothes, and the smaller one for the things that feel heavier if you leave them, letters, the notebook with the unsent letter, the mug that fits my hand. I rolled socks, folded shirts, laid the winter sweater flat so it wouldn't grow tired at the shoulders. I set my winter boots by the door to this room, laces tucked inside like tongues finally quiet. The decisions were easier than I expected. The stand mixer I'd rescued from a thrift store and made new with a belt and a little grease would stay. It belonged to a house where cookies are made for classrooms and bake sales. My extra coat could wait for a second trip. I kept the one that knew my elbows. The boxed china I was keeping for a someday no one had scheduled would stay in the basement and become a later conversation. The lamp with the warm shade that made every book look worth reading went into the smaller case. Light travels, I told myself. In the kitchen, I moved as if learning a room for the first time. Someone had wiped the counters with long, careful strokes. The fruit bowl had been refreshed, glossy citrus nested like ornaments. On the island, an envelope with house guidelines written in my daughter-in-law's tidy hand waited where my eyes would have to land. I recognized the fold. It was the one I'd placed under a placemat and then under thought. I picked it up and broke the seal because there are times when being late is the same as being wrong. The paper spoke in calm sentences. Quiet hours between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m., exceptions for illness/emergencies. Label your food with initials if purchased for personal use. Shared staples are salt, cooking oil, flour, coffee. Please replace if you finish. Sunday evening check-ins to talk about the week. Target move-out date, January 31st. It was not unkind. It was not unreasonable. The place I felt small was in the fact of needing it written at all. The place I felt seen was in the way the words held room for me and for them. They had wanted a bridge. I had wanted not to need a bridge to people who knew me since before they had language. Both can be true, I thought, and still the river gets crossed. The child's gift, the book wrapped in reindeer paper, was on a shelf by the tree where someone had placed it carefully, as if saving a fragile thing from feet. I carried it to the table and took a minute to tighten the corners of the tape, smoothed where it had lifted in the night. From the drawer where pens live, I found a sticky note and wrote, "For morning," in my regular hand. I stuck it to the top and pictured his fingers reading the loops. It felt like leaving myself a small, decent version in a house that would have to relearn my shape. I went back to my room and zipped the larger case, then the smaller, the sounds too loud in the quiet. I stacked the framed photographs into a banker's box. My mother in a dress she sewed herself, my son at 5 with a grin that looked stolen from a cartoon, me holding a cat with both of us pretending not to care. I wrapped them with sweaters and dish towels because bubble wrap is for people who plan. I set my boots by the front door and took one last look around to see if I was mistaking forgetfulness for choice. Keys scraped at the lock. I froze, then straightened because this is a house I lived in and not a place I had snuck into. The door opened and my son stepped in alone. He had a grocery bag in one hand and his shoulders up around his ears as if they'd been keeping his head warm. He saw the suitcases before he saw me, and then he set the bag down very carefully, as if whatever was inside could break. We stood there with the space between us full of everything and also a rug. "Hey," he said, and his voice knew the hallway better than his face did. "Hey," I said. He looked at the suitcases again, and then at me. "I thought you'd text. I thought I'd make it quick," I said. "Nobody home. Quick." He nodded. His eyes found the envelope on the island, and then me again. He put a hand to the back of his neck and rubbed, as if a thought had caught there. "About last night," he said, and then stopped. He looked younger when he was searching for a word.
I'm embarrassed.
"Not because you left. Because I said it like that." "It was a hard word," I said. "It came from somewhere." "It came from too many small things," he said. He picked up the grocery bag and set it on the counter like a prop he didn't want anymore. The overdraft that winter. The pickup day when he sat on the bench and said he wasn't sure I was coming. The storage thing on the bill that I didn't understand, and I felt stupid calling the bank about. The way I felt like I was choosing between my house being a house and me being a son. Also the way you made him cocoa, and sometimes I felt like a guest in my own kitchen and then hated myself for thinking it. "I canceled the storage," I said. "It tied itself to your bundle because I gave it your address like a fool. The bank fixed it. The stupidity wasn't yours." He nodded once. "Thanks." He swallowed. there were also good things. He says granddad the way other kids say superhero. You fixed the sink. You taught him how to blow on soup. He let out a breath that fogged the cold of the entryway air. We just forgot to decide how long temporary was. We did, I said. I forgot more than you. I let the days stack up because they were soft. I didn't say, and I won't say, that I covered him once upon a 22-year-old's rent. If I brought that ledger out, we'd both start counting wrong. I'm moving the rest tomorrow, I said instead. One day, I'll be fast. Then I'll give you the key. He looked at the key in my hand as if it were a bird I might set loose in the house. Okay, he said, and I heard the word he didn't add, please. Tomorrow works. He put his palms on the counter and then took them off, as if he couldn't find a place to set whatever it was he carried. I'm not taking back the word, he said, meeting my eyes. Because parts of it were about the situation, not you. Leech as in something drawing on us. Not you as in my father. But I'm sorry for the way it sounded. I hear the difference, I said. I can live with the difference. We stood in a new quiet. He walked to the tree and touched one of the paper stars the child had made, the kind that always tear in the same place if you're not careful. He'll miss you, he said without looking at me. I'll miss him, I said. That's allowed. He nodded. I picked up the handles of the larger suitcase and tilted it to roll. He reached for the other without asking, and for once I didn't say I had it. At the door, we paused, both of us trained by years to say something to fill pauses. We failed in the best way. He offered his hand. I took it. Our hands knew each other. For a second, our shoulders leaned, the beginning of a hug, and then the part of us that was cautious or proud or simply tired pulled back. It was not a rejection. It was accurate. On the porch, the air had warmed from afternoon pretending to be something gentler. He carried the box of photos to the curb and set it down with care. A rideshare idled 2 houses up, the driver's arm out the window beating time to a song I couldn't hear. We loaded the trunk with the easy rhythm of people who have moved each other in and out of dorms, apartments, rooms not yet named. He closed the trunk and wiped his hands on his jeans as if dust belonged to him. I'll send a time for tomorrow, I said. 2 hours. That should do it.
Text first, he said.
So, I can get him out to the park. Of course. He touched the doorframe on his way back in. Not quite a knock, not quite a blessing. I got into the car and told the driver the motel street. As we pulled away, I looked back once, because sometimes looking back isn't weakness, it's witness. He had already disappeared inside. The wreath had straightened itself in the draft. 2 blocks from the motel, a sign caught the corner of my eye. White, with black letters that someone had printed at home and trimmed neat. Studio. Month to month. Utilities included. An arrow pointed to a brick building with a door the color of a bruise. I asked the driver to slow, lifted my phone, and took a photo through the window. I didn't know yet if it was hope or just a picture of a sign. I saved it anyway. The number on the sign went to a man who answered on the second ring and said, "You can see it in 20 minutes if you don't mind the paint." I didn't mind the paint. I minded having somewhere to put a bed. The studio was 2 flights above a nail salon and a florist that opened early and played a radio in the back room. The hallway smelled like acetone and roses, which felt like an honest way to begin. The landlord met me with a ring of keys the size of a bracelet. He didn't say much, just pushed the door until it caught, and then lifted as he turned the knob. "She's old," he said, like he was introducing me to a relative. The room had good light, 3 tall windows with glass that wavered slightly, so the street bent when a bus passed. The paint peeled in long tongues along the baseboard and around an old radiator that ticked like a watch while we stood there, testing where sound would settle. "I'll take it," I said, because the light was more honest than the peeling, and I had cash for the deposit folded twice in my wallet. We signed at the kitchen counter, which was a slab of wood that had seen better meals. The lease was thin, month to month, utilities included, no pets big enough to knock something over. I wrote my name without shaking. He handed me a single key on a bright yellow fob and said, "Kettle's on you." We both smiled at nothing in particular. I bought the kettle 2 doors down at a houseware shop that sold everything from plastic bins to mugs that said "World's Okayest Cook." The cashier wrapped it in newspaper like it was fragile and told me not to plug it into the same strip as the space heater. Back upstairs, I set it on the sole burner that didn't list and filled it from the tap. When it began to whisper, the radiator ticked in sympathy. The sound felt like a clock refusing to give up. There was no furniture beyond a table and a chair, so the first night I made the bed out of folded blankets and a coat. It was enough. The ceiling had a hairline crack that traveled from one corner toward the light fixture like a map route. I traced it with my eyes until sleep found me. The next morning I moved the rest. I kept the promise. I texted before and arrived at the house with boxes and tape and a plan. We didn't talk much. He took the heavier boxes and went ahead without turning it into a kindness to Tally. 2 hours later, the corner of the room that used to be mine was an honest corner again. I handed him their key. It lay on his palm for a second, then went into the blue bowl on their hall table. The one for keys, hair ties, crayons, everything families put down without thinking. I took a breath that felt like a square shutting. Back at the studio, I carried the last box up 3 flights. A neighbor held the door with a hip while she balanced a laundry basket. She said, "Welcome," like she decided for both of us. I put the framed photos on the windowsill until I could find a hammer. I plugged in the kettle and let the radiator speak to it. The first cup of tea tasted like the metal of newness. It also tasted like relief. Practical things make a life. On the walk to the post office, I passed a hardware store with a handwritten sign in the window. "Help wanted, part-time." The bell on the door made a better sound than it had to. I asked the woman at the counter if she needed someone who knows which end of a screwdriver is useful and can count screws by tens. "Can you show up when you say you will?" she asked. I said yes, and it was true. She told me to come back Tuesday to learn the register and where they keep the 5 kinds of tape that all claim to be the only one you'll ever need. At the bank, I changed the address on anything that would let me. I set alerts to come to my phone and my P.O. box, and I turned on autopay for the few steady bills I claimed as mine now. At the storage unit, I cleared the remainder. A crate of frying pans, a box of winter books, a lamp that always looks right at dusk. I folded the last of the unit into my carless life with 2 rides, the second one driven by a man who said nothing and lifted on the heavier end without waiting for instruction. With the unit empty, I took a photo for myself of the clean concrete floor and then stood there long enough to let the feeling of closing a door for good catch up. I revised the letter. The first draft had been honest and too long. The new one refused dramatics. I did not come to be kept. I came to rest. Then I forgot to move again. I left it as I had written it the first time. I said I was sorry for the weight of me when I didn't mean to be heavy. I thanked them for every bowl, every washed towel, every minute of warmth I'd enjoyed without paying in full. I slid in a copy of the receipt that showed the storage autopay canceled and the reversal from a month it kissed their account. I did not underline anything. I did not wait for my pulse to slow before sealing the envelope. At the blue mailbox on the corner, I fed it in and listened for the thud like a door catching. We met at the diner with a flickering O, neither of us suggesting the house or my studio. I took the booth with the view of the door. He took the side that faced the kitchen. The waitress filled cups and left us alone like she knew what kind of conversation doesn't want to witness. "I'm sorry about the word," he said, once the coffee smell had settled. He kept his hands flat on the table, palms down, like he might hold the apology in place. "It wasn't about you. It was about the way I felt inside my own house. That's not the same." I said it wrong. "I hear you," I said. "I'm sorry about staying past temporary, and pretending temporary can be a feeling instead of a date. That's not the same as being generous." I said that wrong. We smiled at each other because accuracy is its own kind of kindness. He told me the child had asked if I was on a trip, and they'd said yes, the kind where you can visit. I told him to tell the truth next time, that I have my own place now because the truth felt like a gift we could both afford. He said okay. We made the agreement without ceremony. Sundays, late afternoon, tea at my place during the winter, the park when the ground cooperates. No money passing back and forth. No deals where gratitude devolves into accounting. He would not keep a key to my studio. I would not keep a key to their house. Holidays decided a month in advance, not a week. If either of us felt ourselves growing small in a room, we'd say so before the feeling found teeth. When the check came, we both reached. I let him have it because some gestures aren't about debt. We walked outside, and the air had the smell of snow coming, a kind of metal and wool. At the corner, we looked at each other like people do when there's nothing to fix and plenty to get right.
Sunday, he said. Sunday, I said.
Back upstairs, I made a place for the smallest rituals. I found a shallow dish at the thrift store for $1, white with a chip that made it easier to love. I placed it by the door on top of a stack of old mail I was still sorting. From my pocket, I took the old key from a life that didn't fit anymore. The one to the apartment I left 2 years ago and never returned. It doesn't open anything now. I laid it in the dish. It wasn't a pass. It was a reminder that rooms change, and so do we. The studio learned me quickly. I taped the window where the draft came. I set a chair in the slice of sun that hits at 3. The kettle understood its job and did it. On my first day at the hardware store, I wore a name tag and learned that people will tell you their entire project just because you can locate a packet of anchors. I came home with my hands smelling like rope and cardboard. I liked it. In the evenings, I climbed the 3 flights with one more box until there were no more boxes. I greeted the neighbor's dog every other day because that's when he remembered me. I hung the photos on a wall that didn't have anything else to say yet. I put the receipt from the storage company in a file marked Mistakes Fixed, and while I know that's not a folder you can make once for all time, it felt hopeful to label it. When my phone lit up on the crate I was using as a table, it was a photo. My grandson holding the book I had wrapped, cheeks flushed, the paper crown a little crooked. His smile was the same as the one in the frame on my windowsill. Underneath, a message from my son. Sunday tea? I typed, bring biscuits, and set the phone down. I filled the kettle and set it on the burner. The radiator ticked like it agreed. Steam rose. The light on the floor made a path from the window to the door. I stood there and let the room feel full of what it was and what it would be. I didn't leave family. I left a room I'd outgrown. Hey besties, thanks so much for sticking around till the end. If you felt something, learned something, or just enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button.
See you next time. Bye.